2016, the county budget is being proposed at $73,567,000. That is an increase over 2015 of 7.4%. The general fund separately, which is what we primarily focus on when we have budget hearings and what is the primary fund of the county funded by real estate taxes, is increasing by 10.6% to $45,408,000. We have many of our departments and agencies that have experienced 10% cuts over and over from the state in their grant funds. So that portion of the revenue that the county receives and relies on has decreased by 24% over the last 7 years. So overall, the net effect has been that we are getting 5% less revenue now than we were in 2009. And that's not sustainable. General fund expenses have increased by 28%, from $35.4 million in 2009 to $45.4 million in 2016. If you spread that out over 7 years, that is just a little bit over 3% per year. We've been absorbing sharp increases in the costs of the prison, in the cost of detaining and adjudicating juveniles, the costs of investigations and prosecutions of child welfare crimes and other crimes, frankly, and overseeing those adults and juveniles once they go through the system and they're on probation. Some examples of that, of those items, are in the prison budget. As we all know, I think that's the largest single department funded solely by the general fund, and that budget for 2016 is proposed to go up by 7% to now $9.3 million. For the most part, that is due to staffing the operation. We are now at an all-time high inmate population of 550 inmates. That's the highest it's ever been. Using that same 7-year comparison I used earlier, back in 2009, the population was 448. So the population increase has gone up 22%, and the expenditures have pretty much paralleled that, slightly more, but have gone up 25%. If this budget as proposed is approved, I would anticipate that there's a very good chance that sitting here next year that we could be up into the A category again. Employee health insurance premiums to the county are increasing again by 11% for 2016. That's up from about 5% last year, from 8.37 to 9.3 million. They're going up by 925,000, 26,000. What I'm told from the industry is that there's no ceiling to their exposure on medical claims, and for that reason, they have increased premiums in order to anticipate and I guess prevent their losses or cut their losses from that part of the ACA.
Factored in. I think there are people. I would like to go back to a letter I received, which I believe may have been mailed to everybody back around the middle of November. I'm not saying he has everything exactly right, but I'm looking at what he's saying, what his heart and his mind are telling me, which I feel are representative. We're not tightening our budget as good as we could, in my humble opinion. And he says there are many young people that would like to own their own home, but can't with the price of housing and the skyrocketing taxes. Then go and talk with the elderly who are afraid they can't pay their taxes, or that they will lose the place that they worked all of their lives for. I believe it's time that the leadership of our public systems get control of their greed and start having a love and concern for their fellow people in this great land that we live. My question is, how much do we really need, or is it just the wants? And that last line really spoke to me, and I looked harder at the budget and I see many ways, and so therefore I'm asking reconsideration of that millage increase. I don't think it's needed at this time. Karl Koch wrote it. Karl Koch. That correction is duly noted. Thank you.
This is a huge step for us to be taking, but I think the evidence is there to support it. That is being attributed to the prison. That's our single most locally funded piece of this budget. They are the second lowest cost per inmate per day in the state. And they just had a clean review from the Department of Corrections. So we have good quality, low cost comparatively for a prison in a county system. So though that is our largest, there is the fat, or whatever the reference was, that can be saved on there. If we're at second lowest cost in the state, I don't know where you go from there, and still run a safe and credible prison. So those are just a couple comments, and I know that our friends in the Fourth Estate will probably be working on their calculators to see what percentage of an increase this is. And as a person who is trying to get this message out to the public, first we're trying to express why we feel it's important, but also when you take the average, and this is the way we would be, or I'd like to at least throw this out there so that we get, this is not, when we say it, people are going to look at their tax bill and think it's a jump in their tax bill. We need to clarify, this is a county tax increase. This on a $169,000 property, and everybody knows about where they are with the size of their house. This is about 47 cents a day in additional cost to them for all we're giving as the all the services and all the factors that are involved in running the county. So I want to just, you know, it's a high percentage increase because we have run it so efficiently, but that has caught up with us now with a lot of the things that Jamie articulated. So I just wanted to keep that in perspective, that this is a huge hit, but it is it's a manageable budget if you break it down by day and you can see what the actual cost is relative to the value of your home.
I probably am the last person that many of the folks that are going to be hearing about the decision here today, reading about it, hearing about it on the radio station, hearing about it in conversation around the community. I'm probably the last person that they would expect to be on a crusade, I suppose, to increase taxes anywhere in government, and most especially in Lebanon County. There's no question that all of us, I think, learn through process, and certainly the even at my age, my education is still ongoing. I would be unfair if I didn't say that I probably came into this office somewhat naive, as I think all new office holders are. My experience previously was as a township supervisor. My philosophy of government, my philosophy of serving as truly serving as a public official, not feeding at the public trough, is that we should manage government and operate it at the lowest possible cost to the taxpayers. I still believe that. However, there can be additional costs to trying to be frugal, but in the long run being somewhat foolish. And I think that without being overly critical of folks who have come before this board, we see indications of where that proved to be true, and part of the difficulty that the county has been in financially was because the prior boards were unwilling to find a way to meet commitments. And I think this bar graph that Jamie put together concerning the pension fund is a very good indicator of that. And you can see that there was no contributions made by the county to the pension fund. Now that in itself did several things. One, it obviously left the pension unfunded with the exception of contributions made by the employees. But it also allowed monies that come in the form of reimbursement from the state agencies, monies that were lost, because until the county meets its obligation, the state has no obligation to meet theirs as respect to contribution to pensions. So I don't even, and I suppose we could find that number, but a huge number of dollars have gone uncollected and never will be collected. And we have now rectified that, and actually, with all due respect, we have already received some of that money since we turned the corner on the pension. And those funds are actually calculated, I think, into the 2016 budget. So my intention in running for seeking this office the first time and also the second time is to, first of all, to the best of my ability, serve the residents and particularly the taxpayers, because there's a big difference there, you know. For the most part, the taxpayers of the county are the folks that own property in the county. Now, we serve all the residents, but we have a special obligation, I think, to those folks that own property and are paying the bills. And I have a very strong obligation to keep those taxes down. I don't want to pay any more tax. I'll be very honest with you. I think I'm very burdened, and I think I'm overtaxed. We have to make wise decisions. We know, we have reference here to public safety and things like that. We all know, all of us in this room know probably, that our 911, our EMA is at, as I think Jamie already mentioned, end of life. We know we're looking at a huge bill there, money that we couldn't raise out of revenues. So we know we're going to have to do a bond or borrow money to do that. York County, I think one of the commissioners told me at the CCAP conference that they are looking at borrowing $27 million to update their 911. If we know our IT it's devastating. People work here, we go, even without email for days at a time. Courts are operating under that. All of our departments, our tax bills were late getting out. Those are things that are occurring because we've postponed making reasonable updates. I do not think this budget has fat in it. I do not think that we as commissioners are being extravagant. You know, with minimal raises for the folks. We just turned down the request from our employees to have off Christmas Eve. We're not living on the land. We're not extravagant in any way. If, again, we could waste more money by allowing our position in the rating system to be at a lower level, but we all know that when we have to borrow money, that again is going to cost us more if we don't right that situation. So as difficult as it is for me to vote for this tax increase, I'm willing to do it, just as I was willing to vote to sell Cedar Haven. And I would just refer a moment as to where, if your imagination can run wild for a moment, where we would be if we had not made that difficult decision a few years ago.
Instead of sending us 4 quarters, their philosophy is, or logic is, that by the end of the 4th quarter, which would be in the quarter of April, May, and June of the state fiscal year, they haven't yet paid us that 4th quarter until the next month, July. Well, that next month carries over into the next fiscal year. So the state's position is, maybe, that since that doesn't happen until the following fiscal year, we'll just budget 3 quarters of it in the 15-16 budget, and you'll get 4 quarters then in the 16-17 budget. But then there's a floating quarter there that it appears we'll never get, even though they promise that somewhere down the road that'll come to us. So by only getting 3 out of the anticipated 4 quarters in the state budget 15-16, that means in our calendar year budget, we're going to be short $1 million in the children and youth side of things that in order to balance, we would have to make up. And that's a huge impact. I mean, huge impact for something that is being characterized as a accounting trick, bookkeeping, shell game, whatever you want to call it. If they follow through with that, and there's a good chance that they might, we have to go back to this budget as proposed and find another $1 million to supplement the children and youth funding that we wouldn't get in 2015-16.
I think measuring your fund balance as a percent of your overall budget is a more prudent way to approach it, given what's going on both at the federal level and the state level. And everybody's really good at saying, you ought to have these services, but we're not responsible for paying those. The only thing you can do is try to continue to move more toward what the private sector is, where the deductibles are really, really high, and the co-pays are higher than what your employees probably are paying, or at least in most counties. But in the private sector, most family deductibles are now up to $1,000, $1,500, $2,000, and in some cases higher, in an effort to just keep the year-over-year cost of increase to the employer in that high single-digit range of 7, 8, 9%. The rating agency, I don't know if I made the point, the rating agency's perspective is your fund balance should be measured against your total budget, not general fund. Again, they look at it as, okay, this year is a great example, that's why that's our measurement. 8 million against 73 million is 11-ish%, 10 to 11%. That puts you kind of solidly in the middle of what the A category is pro forma supposed to be, somewhere between 5 and 15%.
I had a clarification. You mentioned the reserve, the 8 point whatever. Is that entirely from the Cedar Haven proceeds?
Yeah,
or
that is. Mm-hmm.
That's all for you.
Mm-hmm.
To get assurances to our public, but it comes with a price. But I just wanted to, in the dangerous world in which we live, I think it's worth mentioning that there is a big emphasis on the public safety tenet of our responsibility.
So your obligation at this point in time, at this point of December, is to tentatively adopt a 2016 budget to be placed on the table for public view for at least 20 days. Temporarily adopting that and setting the millage, proposing it, putting it out there, and then we would be back on December 24th for a meeting, which main purpose of which meeting that meeting would be to approve the budget.
That's
finally.
a special meeting.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to accept the millage increase as presented of 1 mil to balance the budget of 2016.
Would you finally second it? Please.
I will if I have to. I'll ask you if you'll second it. You will not second it, okay? All right. I'll second the motion then. Is
May
there
I-
any, you
Yeah,
want?
May I try just one more time? I heard Jay say acceptable is 5 to 15% of the entire budget. That would also equate to 10% of the general fund, both being in that range. I also think I heard Jay say, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so please correct me if I'm wrong, that if we raise the real estate tax, we're supposed to blame the state government?
No, I wasn't blaming anybody. I was just saying you have a structural imbalance. And if you're looking for a structurally balanced budget, that doesn't.
But I have been raising the yellow flag of caution for months now concerning this 25% cut, what it would come down to for this year in our children and youth budget. And I'm glad that people are taking it seriously now, and I'm hoping and praying that the state does see the wisdom in taking care of our most vulnerable citizens and filling that gap, and also reinstating the 10% that was cut in 2012. while we're on 2012, Commissioner Ames, you mentioned the payments. And in 2012, if I'm not wrong, in the budget there was a $500,000 contribution that was not made. And that was in the budget, and that was during a year when we were all in office together. And again, I had raised that caution. When it comes to the 911 center, the line charges have recently been increased very generously by the state legislators to $1.65 a year on all devices. It doesn't matter if it's cell phone, voice over IP, landlines. I believe it's on all of them equally, if I remember correctly. And so any improvements we do could be funded through that, not all in one year, but over, if we have a bond issue, that money would cover those improvements over a number of years. So it shouldn't be considered that it has to be taken all out of this year's budget. And then you ask, where would we be if we didn't sell Cedar Haven? Well, we would be following the plan that professionals made, and we would have, I think it was something like 300 or so employees still paying into the pension fund, rather than many of them withdrawing lump sums and reducing our fund balance. That's my view of where we would be. Thank you.
Okay.
Call the question.
All those in favor of the motion to preliminarily adopt the budget with the 1 mil increase indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Okay. There you go.